Present.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Present.
Mayor Flores.
Present. Oral communications, this is the opportunity to address the city council in any matter scheduled for closed session unless additional time is authorized by the council. All commentary shall be limited to 3 minutes. See that there is no one in attendance. We will move on to the city council closed session.
Thank you, Your Honor. There are 4 items before closed session, before the council in closed session. The first, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, Council Real Property Negotiators Property, 298 North Main Street, Suite 1, and 25 East Thurman Avenue, Suite 4, Porterville, California. Agency Negotiator John Lawless, negotiating party, City of Porterville and Sierra View Medical Center, under negotiation terms and price. Item 2, Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D, subsection 1, Council of Legal Counsel, existing litigation, City of Porterville v. Keo Malavoni et al., Tulare County Superior Court, case number 282164. Item 3, Government Code Section 54946.9, subsection D, subsection 3, Council of Legal Counsel, anticipated litigation and significant exposure to litigation, 4 cases in which facts are not yet known to potential plaintiff. And item 4, Government Code Section 54946.9, subsection D, subsection 4, Council of Legal Counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, 3 cases. Staff's report.
Thank you. 5:32 will go into closed session. It is 6:30. We will reconvene open session and report on reportable action items taken in closed session.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Thank you very much. We will now go into the Pledge of Allegiance, and please stand. It's led by Vice Mayor Reyes.
Salute, pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. Is there anyone that would like to lead us in an invocation? If not, we will do a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. This is a time for oral communications. This is the opportunity to address the council on any matter of interest, whether on the agenda or not. Please address all items not scheduled for public hearing at this time. Unless additional time is authorized by the council, all commentary shall be limited to 3 minutes. I believe is there anyone that would like to come up under oral communications? If you're here for the public hearing, you will have time at that item to state whatever you'd like.
Your Honor, we did receive commentary via email, and I'd like to read those into the record. We have 7 individuals that would like their comments to be heard.
Thank you.
The first one is from an individual that indicates the government is not saying where that person who has COVID-19 in Porterville has been. The date and times they have been to public places. This is totally wrong. No one knows where those places are and could be subjected to possibly contracting that virus. So that is how it is spread, people not knowing. They have it for 2 weeks, are spreading it around not knowing. So spreading it is more the government's fault for that. Also, to let everyone know, this was biowarfare, proven by espionage by the people caught doing that. One was a professor at Harvard University and a lady who is in the Chinese military, smuggling vials of bioweapon chemicals. Also more proof that the scientists' websites are finding a vaccine for this virus, but they have been hacked. This is war. The second comment received says, we should close all PUSD and Burton School District schools down to stop the spread of coronavirus. A lot of kids and families are going to be going out of town and might bring the infection back to schools. Even though they're deep cleaning, they're still spreading the virus if contacted and contaminating the school as well as spreading it to all elders and disabled students. Please keep our children safe. Every school district has closed their doors except for Porterville. What's wrong with this picture? The next comment is if PUSD schools close, that will give all students the chance to travel or go out more. Realistically, the students won't stay home unless they really want to or have to. If we have thousands of children out and about that are normally at school, children can and will retract the virus from others. I suggest we stick to going to school and get this year over with. If the district decides it's best to suspend school, there's no telling that the virus will be gone by the suggested date that students will return to school. Next comment is, hello, I'm a 17-year-old senior. I currently attend Porterville High School. This is the senior's last semester of high school. We are all really looking forward to everything that has yet to come. This is supposed to be our most memorable year of high school, senior prom, senior ditch day, senior trip, graduation day. I've been working really hard in school, and I would hate for it all to come to an end. There are many other people who can be affected. What if some people don't have someone to watch their kids while they're at work? What if school food is the only food some children get? What if school is the only safe haven for some kids? I still believe some parents should have the option to keep their kids home, but for the kids who want to continue to go to school, they should be allowed to continue to go to school. Please just help us keep school going. The fifth comment is, these are my concerns. I am an educator at PUSD. I am currently 6 months pregnant and have been trying very hard for the last 6 months to stay healthy for the sake of my baby. This is my second pregnancy and my second son. My first son died due to a heart complication 6 weeks after birth. As a member of Porterville Unified School District, I have been fearing for my safety regarding the constant stream of updates from medical professionals and the CDC. The CDC is now currently recommending to stay away from groups of 50 plus or more. I am doing all I can to protect myself and my child. Being forced to go to work during all this uncertainty is insane and cruel. As of now, the effects of COVID-19 in pregnant women are not clear, but I will be damned if I will allow my second son to be another medical statistic. PUSD, please think about all your employees. I beg you to think of those who work for the district and are immunocompromised. The next comment is, greetings, Porterville City Council. My name is Elaine Harris. I live at 1015 South Crystal, Porterville, California. With the growing concerns over the financial and physical impact that is rapidly taking place here in Porterville and other cities in our state, I wish to submit to the council the following. Number one, city to place a rate cap on motels, hotels, and other low-income facilities here in our town. Reason being that it has become apparent to me that a gouging of housing funds allotted to the homeless by social services is being abused by some. This needs to stop. That is why I feel the city should set a reasonable price cap for facilities that are participants in this program. To charge $69.99 plus tax for a filthy, unsanitary room is not only inhumane but should be considered illegal. The price will go up. Our governor has stated that monies will be allotted to cities for housing for the homeless. If the council does not intervene in this matter, I predict a serious problem relative to this overcharge, better known as price gouging. Respectfully submitted, Elaine Hayes Harris. The final comment received indicates, I think that the community should cancel all events due to the coronavirus. This is a very serious sickness and the spread of it would be catastrophic. I believe that schools should be closed. You keep all children from catching the virus and taking it home to the elderly. These are things that we have to consider to make our life safe. Thank you, Edward Leroy Cesris. And that concludes all the commentary we received.
Thank you very much. We will now go into the reports. This is the time for all committee, commission, board reports, subcommittee reports, and staff informational items. City commission and committee meetings. I don't believe we have anyone here to do any reports. Is there anyone in the, I don't believe so. Okay, then we will go on to the AB 1234 reports. This is the time for all AB 1234 reports required pursuant to Government Code 53232.3. Some of these were carried over from the last meeting. The first one is the Joint City School Committee. Councilmember Stowe, did you have anything to report on that?
Yes, I did, Mayor. Thank you. We had in attendance, we had Councilwoman Garola, Felipe Martinez from the school district, Dula Alvarado from the Burton School District, and Jay Rice from the Burton School District, as well as Jenny Byers, the staff of Jenny Byers and Javier and Nate Nelson from the Porterville School District, Chief Lapierre and Captain Cardoza, Donnie Moore, Mike Knight, myself, and Mr. Lawless. And first we talked about active transportation program at Safe Route School. And just briefly, they mentioned streets that were going to be, well, actually, Olive and Dameron, the LED crossing, and a few other had problems. And they're talking about, I guess, removing some of the road lights and putting in just the flashing signals on the side. And of course, Mr. Lawless mentioned the lights that were for the stoplights that would flash for pedestrians, not flash, but actually stop you for pedestrians. And I don't remember the name of those, Mr. Lawless, if you can, and you can probably update him on that.
They're called a Hawk system, and it's actually a stoplight, a pedestrian stoplight.
Okay. And we talked about the Step Up event, which is probably going to be canceled, the bike safety event. I know there's a meeting supposedly next week.
Right.
I'm sure it's going to be canceled.
Yeah, we had an anticipated date, second Saturday of May, that may need to be moved because of all of the recent gathering restrictions.
And the homeless student service, the foster children and homeless students. PUSD has a liaison to help students in this category, and I'm sure Burton, they didn't mention if they did or not, but they mentioned they had some professional on campus that could help. And so they're working on that, I guess, for the census as well. And we also mentioned the construction. Granite Hills has a Law and Justice construction building that's going up and almost completed, I think. City of Porterville, we talked about street construction, Henderson and Plano, basically, and Jay and Henderson with the LED crosswalks. And basically, the animal shelter was under design, and basically that's what we went over. And if Mr. Laws, if you can think of anything else, I know we went over the 2020 census, how important it was for the schools to get involved and have their families of the students make sure they connect with the Census Bureau and put in the right information. We mentioned the library bond. That was could be a possibility, but I don't think we received that now. And outdoor watering, where we're at 50% of normal rain, so we have to be careful of that. And they want to know if they could probably water their lawns a little longer, a little more. And of course, we laughed and said no. It was just a meeting that we all sent out general information, and I'm sure Mr. Wallace could probably elaborate it a little more.
Yeah, and that's, I would say, Councilman did a great job in summarizing the meeting. The one piece I would, because it's been a conversation every time with the schools, has been additional watering because of the limitations. And so, one of the things we mentioned is that we have 3 wells that are all, we continue to, pardon the pun, but carry the water on East Porterville without the promised water supplies to do that. There would be additional consideration. It's all a water pressure consideration. So, with those 3 wells all coming online, there would be a lot better opportunity to have a general discussion about watering. It's all a matter of trying to make sure the system is fully charged and being able to use our tanks and those sorts of things. So essentially the conversation was, once we're having all of our wells constructed and the East Portable, the second East Portable water reservoir constructed, let's have a conversation about that. So, and I would say that they'd say, you can't blame us for asking, but they understand that the limitations on it just doesn't change the conversation, that they like to see additional watering opportunities, as with the city. So, we've talked about perhaps having separate watering days for the city and the schools, because it's all about balancing water load. But really, until such time as that those 3 wells, one of those items was for you, this council, moving forward incrementally in the Aiken well, but it's the Aiken well and the Church well and I would call it the Smee well, until all 3 of those are up and running and providing you capacity, it's really challenging to look at doing anything more extended.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the report. Tulare County Association of Governments Transit Forum. I know this is one Councilmember Garola highlighted at the last meeting. Since she's not here, so we will ask her if she wants to carry it over. The San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, Councilmember Reyes?
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor.
Thank you. Actually, I want to ask that we carry this over with all that's happening in the world. The highlights for the meeting on the 20th, which I missed, haven't been published, and the next meeting happens this Thursday, which the minutes from that meeting will be approved, so I'd prefer to carry over this report to the next meeting with the meeting that's happening this Thursday as well. That way I get all the facts that are approved.
Okay, we will carry that one over. We will move on to the Tulare County Association of Governments. This is one I asked to carry over. We met on Monday, February the 24th in Woodlake at the Community Center. Mr. Knight, Mr. Tree, Councilwoman Garola, and I were in attendance. The consent calendar included one action item, which was the adoption of resolution of the safety performance management targets for 2020. There was a presentation that was done at this meeting for pavement marketing requirements. Mr. David Preston and Mr. James Malloy introduced the bright side of striping. Mr. Malloy highlighted the importance of roadway safety, public liability, and guidelines for autonomous vehicles, the importance of public-private partnerships, and stated that uniformity, maintenance, and partnerships were the key factors to success. I'm going to look at Mr. Tree real quick on this one, and he stated at that meeting the importance of the striping on all the highways and all the freeways, which is what keeps the vehicles in check and in line. Is that correct? Okay. The approval of the minutes of January 27th and the minutes of January 22 for the Technical Advisory Committee meeting were approved. Other items of action was a resolution to adopt the 2020 through 2023 TCAD Transit Assessment Management Targets, the approval to work with Caltrans in the development of a Trade Corridor Enhancement Program grant application, the adoption of the resolution for the transit performance measures. A letter of support was requested in the event, support in concept for Senator Beal's Federal Transportation Improvement Program. Had to do with update and timing on a bill. The one item that I brought back with me, which was an action item, Tulare County Transportation Authority 2019 Local Partnership Program, Formulaic Program Project Nomination. This is a project that is State Route 190 and Westwood Roundabout and operational improvements. It's near the city of Porterville at the intersection of State Route 190 and Westwood Avenue. The purpose of this project is to relieve isolated congestion within the corridor at various locations on State Route 190. Caltrans would be the implementing agencies. The funds that were requested were $1,387,000 with matching local funds of $1,387,000. The source of matching local funds would be the Tulare County Transportation Sales Tax measure, which is Measure R. There were no updates at this meeting for Caltrans of projects in this area. Just reminder that the Form 700s were due. The next meeting is March 16th in the Board of Supervisors chambers. That concludes that TCAG report. We will now move into the Tulare County Economic Development, which is continued from the last meeting.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to attend this meeting, as I previously reported. Really no significant items of note, other than there was going to be, the public member dues were discussed, and as I reported to you, that the county is having some consternation about that, and so at an April meeting, date not specific, that the Board of Supervisors, along with Tulare County EDC representatives, will be discussing, and I guess the board determining whether they choose to continue their membership in the EDC beyond June 30th. There's an EDC Economic Summit that was supposed to be next Friday that has been postponed, given group gathering restrictions, and has been tentatively rescheduled for April 24th, so they'll be for approximately 1 month, so hopefully things will be in a position to be able to, we were looking at almost 300 attendees at that event, so disappointingly. So those are the major elements. There was a discussion about trends involved with large recruitment of distribution centers and those sorts of things, and that kind of ended the meeting. So with that.
Thank you very much. The next one, the Tulare County Task Force on Homelessness. We continued that one over. Did Mr. Ridenour, is he in the building? I'm just asking because he attended the meeting with me.
He's in the bullpen.
I may need his assistance. I may need his assistance because he and I attended this meeting.
If any of you are familiar with baseball, we need a camera to see into the bullpen, plus we need a phone to call the bullpen. So we need both of those things.
Oh, I appreciate it because.
Of course, after there's a home run, you might see some of them dancing or that sort of thing, but anyway.
Well, we can't have the camera be stealing signals. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I can actually go on to LAFCO and come back to that one. I will go on to the LAFCO meeting, which was held on March 4th. I attended the meeting. The approval of the January 22nd minutes were approved. There were no public comments. This was an intense meeting because it involved the annexation to the city of Tulare and detachment from the Tule Irrigation District and from County Service Area Number 1. Case number 1547T166. It was in regard to the Cartmill Crossing. It was a public hearing. The city of Tulare submitted a request for an annexation of approximately 144.43 acres of land located at the northeast corner of Cartmill Avenue and State Route 99. An environmental impact report has been prepared compliant with CEQA by the city of Tulare. Of the 143.3 acres included in the annexation, 30 would be for low-density residential development, 4.4 acres would be for medium-density residential development, and 7.7 acres would be for highly residential development. No current tentative map has been filed, and unknown at this time how many residential units will be added as a result of this annexation, but the EIR projects 342 units to be built, 132 single-family units, and 210 multifamily units. The city of Tulare submitted another annexation proposal, 1549T167, which was scheduled to be heard at the same meeting. That concurrent annexation of approximately 18.1 acres anticipated 81 single-family homes to be constructed. No residential land has been annexed into the city of Tulare since 2010. The annexation to the city of Tulare and detachment from Tule Irrigation District and from County Service Area Number 1, case number 1549, this is in the Fernjo Estates, the public hearing. The city of Tulare submitted a request for an annexation of approximately 18.1 acres of land located east of Mooney Boulevard, approximately 1,400 feet south of the intersection of Mooney Boulevard and Bardsley Avenue. Both annexations to the city of Tulare and the detachment from the Tule Irrigation District and from County Service Area Number 1 described in both these cases above, though the items in public hearings were separate and they were discussed simultaneously. Deputy City Manager from Tulare, Mr. Josh McDonald, was thankful to staff, responded to questions with regard to the sewer service and the current water status. Prior to the meeting, a letter was sent to the commission from the Leadership Council, signed by Blanca Escobedo with regard to the Matheny Tract water and sewer service availability. During the public hearing, she spoke and stated she was fine with the recommendations, which at that time, both annexations were unanimously approved by the commission. The next item was another public hearing, which was a sphere of influence amendment to the City of Woodlake, case number 1548W-25A. The City of Woodlake submitted a request for a sphere of influence amendment of approximately 38 acres of land located west of the intersection of Cajon Avenue and State Route 245, adjacent to the City of Woodlake. The amendment is needed to accommodate a portion of the proposed annexation in case 1548W-25. The area is already served by the Woodlake Fire Protection District. Under this hearing, there were no public comments. This sphere of influence was unanimously approved by the commission. The next item, which is the annexation to the City of Woodlake and detachment from County Service Area Number 1, case number 1548-W25. The City of Woodlake submitted a request for the annexation of approximately 54.4 acres of land, which includes approximately 38 acres of land located west of the intersection of Cajon Avenue and State Route 245, and approximately 16.4 acres of land located between Cajon Avenue and Wachuma Avenue east of Road 212. The annexation area is intended to facilitate a residential subdivision and clean up an area where the city boundary bisects parcel boundaries, which in that case there were 10 parcels. Under this public hearing, there were no comments. The annexation was unanimously approved by the commission. The legislative update was a handout. Our next meeting is April the 1st, 2020, and that concludes that report. Now we'll go into the homeless task force. And the reason I've asked Mr. Reidenauer, in case I may have left something out, or his assistants, because he and I both attended, and it was an interesting meeting. The meeting was held on February the 26th. Their minutes of January 15, 2020 were approved. Public comment. Sheriff Boudreaux had been invited to be a part of the conversation of the homeless task force. He stated that homeless areas continue to grow. Camps were growing from other counties and preying on others. He shared several issues with an emphasis on drug connection to homelessness. He said there was a frustration with regard to the decriminalization and the drug use in California, which was a big mistake. He said that they can arrest, but they cannot retain. They can go before a judge, orders a 30 to 180-day sentence, then they are released. He also shared that the drug court had decreased in enrollment, and he was bringing awareness to the prongs of homelessness and with an emphasis to criminalize the drug use. Did I leave anything out to that effect, Mr. Reidenauer? Please.
Thank you, Mayor. No, I feel like you explained it greatly. Also, he just really opposed Proposition 47, which he went on to explain why that proposition has made his job more difficult.
I appreciate that. Well, we'll continue, because I may need you again. Under public comment, Jody Foster, our Turning Point Regional Director, shared that the Porterville Welcome Center bathroom construction begins on March the 9th, and looking forward to opening early April. The center will provide 30 beds, 15 beds for emergency shelter, and 15 beds for transitional housing. which are being housed in the former portable classrooms. She stated they are working with people to bring it together. It will provide on-site daily social services such as addiction counseling, case management, healthcare, housing, job training, legal aid, life skills, etc. There was an Eden House development presentation which was brought to the Homeless Task Force by Betsy McGovern Garcia of Self-Help Enterprises, which she shared regarding the development. It is a 22-bed facility which was constructed in approximately 1980. It operated as an assisted living facility with bridge housing and recuperative care. She stated that the project moved with Self-Help Enterprises and the Kings Tulare Homeless Alliance, both City of Tulare and Visalia, with the assistance of several funding sources. The project began in 2018. The operation and services, wraparound services, low barrier and housing, referral from coordinated entry system. The project was completed March 2nd. She said that the partnership key was patience and perseverance for the ongoing support. The other item was to receive information from Michelle Smith on various allocations managed by Kings Tulare Homeless Alliance and the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program grant opportunities. Ms. Smith provided us with a brief update. There were 21 projects in round one, such as the Eden House, the Wellness Center, Warming Center. In round two, the Porterville Wellness Center. What she stated were renewal projects were to be kept alive, and I believe I may have left out a portion, Mr. Reidenauer.
No problem, Mayor. Yes, so the first rounds of fill, as it's called, was a heap and cash funding of approximately $4 million. And then this round is just coming up to be released in mid to late spring, as they're predicting, will be the HAPP funding, which is approximately $2.1 million of funding. And Mayor, as you stated, they place an emphasis on funding current programs that were funded by prior fill applications.
Thank you very much. The other item was very brief. It was to discuss and vote on an amendment. It had to do with a minor change brought forth by legal counsel on the bylaws regarding the number of task force members which would constitute a quorum. The final item was the general discussion on the strategic plan and the next steps and how each jurisdiction envisions support from the task force in city efforts moving forward. Councilmember Sarah shared from Tulare that they had barely started and met the day before and that they would be coming up with a plan. I shared that we had started months before on our navigation welcome center, and we will soon be opening, commending the City of Porterville staff for doing their research and their work, and we look forward to continued support. And it was decided that we would be bringing reports back, but I believe Visalia indicated that they were taking a different approach to that regard, and that's not, and I believe I need your assistance on that as well.
Yes, Mayor. Visalia Deputy City Manager explained that the city is taking an approach of, their viewpoint is to allow the private sector to work in this space, and that they would support the private sector in the background, but yet the private sector would be taking the lead and the different nonprofit organizations in their effort.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our dual report. I'm appreciative to your assistance, Mr. Reidenauer. It was a lengthy meeting. We will now move on to the 2020 Census Complete Count Committee. It's another one of mine. We met on March the 5th here in Porterville. It's the Porterville Complete Census Count. Thank you to Jenny Byers for coordinating, chairing the meeting, which is inclusive of Mr. Reidenauer and Rosillo. Okay, the meeting began with self-introductions by the organizations in attendance. There were no public comments. However, it was important to put emphasis on the meeting. Mr. Lawless and I had attended on February the 13th with the San Joaquin Valley Division, the California League of Cities. We had brought to this table while we were getting ready for the meeting that the program manager reminded us at that meeting how important participation was with cities and counties with the hard-to-count areas, and regard the funding, how important it was, how it would help the roads, schools, community programs for seniors, and improve housing. I reminded and stated that up front she had asked us with a show of hands as to how many in the room were involved with their cities and working on the census. Well, less than half the room had raised their hands, and she distributed the timeline. This meeting was overall productive. We moved a lot of items here in Porterville, and Porterville makes me proud because we're one step ahead, and here we are with the census now. Barbara Pillegard had announced there was training that day. Mr. Palmier shared that he had attended one of the training sessions with emphasis placed when speaking to people that there are no questions with regard to citizenship, no financial information is requested, nor any social security information. It is based on the physical address and who's in the house. And the question was asked, who is working on an assistance center or kiosk? Porterville Unified will place assistance centers at West Putnam, Bellevue, Porterville High School, with possible kiosks in between. The city of Porterville, Proteus, Tule River Indian Reservation included in that. Porterville Area Coordinating Council, they hadn't decided whether they were going to do a kiosk or a center. The Central California Crisis Center said that they would be doing a kiosk. Someone would be checking with Porterville College. Sierra View Medical Center will continue to promote the census with their patient and internally with the facility. And then there was the online questionnaire. We distributed the timeline, and the March 12th, it's already here. I personally already received my census. I don't know if others have, but make sure you complete them, otherwise you'll be getting more information. And again, the overview, the calendar of events, the mini grant update. Central California Crisis Center will be applying for $2,000. The question was asked if there were still funds available for the district. The response was yes. Upon completion, it was to be submitted to the local ad hoc committee. Mr. Ridenauer shared the outreach efforts with regard to social media, to create the social media to our community, and that a unified effort of sharing the census. That concludes this report. A lot has been going on. Thank you so much. Now, we go on to the Eastern Tule Groundwater Sustainability Agency.
Thank you, Mayor. On the 5th, we met right here in council chambers. Aside from the normal housekeeping items such as minutes and bills and warrants, there were 2 action items. The first was a contract to consider approving a contract with Land IQ, which measures the evaporative transpiration in the sub-basin. The contract is for measurements of both satellite and surface equipment for the entire sub-basin, and the agreement is it's at the rate of 76 cents per acre for the entire 470,000 acres in the entire Tule sub-basin. Our portion of that would be approximately $10,000 a month to get these measurements. Why it's crucial that everybody use the same information is so that we can coordinate efforts and all be looking at the same data that we're getting, because the important thing about knowing how to make water sustainable is knowing where it is. So this was a pretty good contract to look at, and also looking at the other agencies using this technology as well. The second item that was up had to do with Rogelio Cadillo, the executive director of the GSA interim executive director. He's no longer the interim executive director. He is now the general manager. The title has changed and he is no longer interim, so congratulations to Rogelio, and we look forward to the next meeting, the first Thursday of next month.
Thank you very much. Tulare County Association of Governments. We met yesterday, March the 16th. The meeting was held at the Board of Supervisors in Visalia. Mr. John Lawless, Mr. Rich Tree, and I participated via teleconference. Also participating via teleconference was our Board of Supervisor, Mr. Dennis Townsend, and Mayor Gomez of Farmersville. The meeting began with the Tulare County Transportation Authority portion of the TCAG meeting. The authority consent calendar included action items, which were the minutes of February the 25th authority meeting and the minutes of February the 20th, the Technical Advisory Committee meeting, with the adoption of resolution to affirm the Citizens Oversight Committee. The one large action item for the authority was the adoption of resolution authorizing the issuance and sale not to exceed 100 million of Series 2020 Measure R sales tax revenue bonds documents, and it was unanimously approved. We then reconvened to the Tulare County Association of Governments Transportation to the consent calendar, which included 2 action items, the adoption of resolutions to approve Transportation Development Act claims for the cities of Exeter, Farmersville, Woodlake, and Porterville for the fiscal year 2019-2020, and to approve the new active Transportation Advisory Committee member. The public hearing had to do with unmet transit needs. Information was provided by staff. No public comments were made at the hearing, and it will continue through the end of the month with direct information to staff. It was also announced that there was a public meeting in Porterville for the afternoon. The one item that continues to be a carryover is the One Voice trip to Washington, D.C., which is slated for June 22 and 20 through 25. It will continue as planned unless otherwise directed to council at such time. It pleases me to announce, with reference to an item regarding member agency Transportation Development Act for the audit year ending June 30th, that the City of Porterville and Tulare TDA audits are complete. There were no findings or material weaknesses. Remaining to be submitted are Dinuba, Exeter, Farmersville, Woodlake, Visalia, and the County of Tulare have not completed theirs. There were no project updates from Caltrans for this area. However, they did introduce a new district director, and her name is Nebula Abirashad. She provided information and what she brings to the table to introduce herself and what she does in her position, and she's looking forward to work with TCAG. Next meeting is Monday, April the 20th in Tulare, and that concludes that report. Tulare County Association of Governments Unmet Needs Hearing.
Thank you, Your Honor. There was a hearing, in addition to the unmet needs hearing that had been scheduled in Visalia during the regular TCAG meeting, there was one specific to Porterville that was scheduled for 5:30 yesterday. There were no members of the public that, well, there was a member of the public that attended, Mr. Eckhoff, but he had no comments to make, and so there was no comments received during that hearing.
Thank you so much. Thank you for attending the meeting. All right, staff informational reports.
Thank you, Your Honor. There are 4 reports that have been provided for council's information. The first, Housing Annual Progress Report. This is an annual report reflecting that there were 78 units constructed in the prior calendar year, which brings to a total of 300 that we are within our current RENA, which is a deficit of 2,900 from the 3,200 units that were supposed to be constructed during the 8-year RENA period. And just as a disclosure, that RENA period finishes in the 2022-23 timeframe, which TCAG, this is a process administered by the Tulare County Association of Governments, is beginning the next RENA. And just as a duty to prepare you that the numbers are doubling or tripling in the next RENA. So with 3,200 having been the RENA for the prior 8 years, we're probably likely looking at 8,000 or 9,000 probably is the City of Porterville's allocation as part of the RENA. Just prepare you for that now.
Thank you.
Secondly, water conservation status report. Kind of some conflicting, but we're in transition at the state level from gross production to gallons per person per day calculations. So even though we saw a 6.25% increase in our gross production, we actually, on a gallons per person per day calculation, we actually saw 19% conservation for the prior month, which we still have a running average of 26.5, exceeding our 26% conservation target. There were 15 notices of violations issued with no citations. The staff report was provided with regards to police officer equipment vests. With us this evening, I believe the chief has, for the council's viewing, an officer that is wearing that, so you can see this has been something that the chief has been really reviewing and looking at how maintain the professionalism of appearance of our officers in our community and combine that with better equipment and equipping them. And at that point, let's see.
And I listed all in my report. You know, I'd certainly be welcome to answer any questions. But as you'll see as you travel really across the country, but particularly in this county and across the state,
I can move over a little bit so I can see.
Oh, he
Is that
wants
a
to see
picture?
this is something that a lot of agencies are going to. The equipment that we carry can weigh anywhere from 20 to 25 pounds, and just over the course of time, we see a lot of injuries on it. As I mentioned in my report, after 5 years, it is now considered a presumptive injury. A lower back injury is considered presumptive based on the duty belt and the weight on the duty belt, which just solidifies the thought that it is very heavy on the hips. The way it forces your hips forward, the way you have to pull yourself in and out of a car, this distributes over 70% of the weight to the entire back, including the muscles, ribs, that sort of thing. We've been wearing it. Sergeant Dean is wearing it now. We've had several other people wear it. There is no limitations on movement, no limitations on the activities that an officer needs to take out there on the street. And again, it's just one of those things, you know, everything you see on an officer's uniform over the course of time is really an advancement based on improvements that could be made, and this is the next step. We've been really hesitant, you know, we were looking at this when I first took over, but we've been really hesitant because I am a traditional guy. It took me a long time to change certain things. It still does, but my staff comes to me and they really educate me on certain things. But finally, we've come out with some vests that we feel meet the purpose of taking the weight off, but still prevents a professional image. We did not want a militaristic image. We wanted still to be approachable and not appear like we're some kind of military force. And as you can see, the front of this vest, the pockets, the way they're shaped, and the color of the vest, it really is basically the same form as our uniform shirt. It's just with the equipment moved up off the belt.
Nice. What do you think? Look at that.
Sergeant Dean would take you up on that. This is a lot. One of his hobbies.
Very much.
Mayor, may I ask a question, please?
Sure you can.
Yes.
Will that act as body armor as well as your vest?
The body armor actually attaches inside of this vest. So when they're done with their shift, they can take off the weight, including the body armor, and still have the shirt on and still, you know, be presentable inside the station. Not that they're ever unpresentable in the station. I'd like to make that clear. I mean, just, but they can take it off and it fits over the uniform shirt. There is the option where they cannot put the vest panels. They can still wear the vest panels underneath the uniform shirt if they choose to. But in this particular case, the vest panels are put into this. It's the same vest panels we already have. They're just removed from their other carrier and placed into this carrier.
And last night I took it home and took the panels out and washed it, and real simple to get in and out.
That answer your question?
Yes, very cool.
Do you have any questions, Councilmember Peñalosa?
No, all I could say is that I was excited when I got this 2 weeks ago. I got my laptop case, and I was excited because I could add more things to. I had more compartments to add things to. So I can only anticipate the officers being excited to fill in those pockets or things. And I mean, overall, I appreciate Chief Krolos' report on the fact that I think it's going to be able to help them to make sure that they're not. Their health is important. So making sure that they have the right adequate equipment is important, as well as making sure that they don't have any back pains in the future. So. Yeah.
And well, thank you. And actually, this uniform, it's particularly designed to only bring the equipment off of the belt. So it's really not adding any more equipment. It's just removing it from the belt and place on the way on top. And as I said in mine, the cost benefit, it will cost a little bit of money to implement this, but far less than a single back injury. As you know, we've lost 2 this year already from back injuries, having to be medically retired, and we have several that are off right now that are presumptive. So I'm sure that HR and Ms. Hildreth will be very happy when those slow down in the future. As will our scheduling lieutenant.
That's great. And the sergeant makes a great model.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then last was your first report of proclamation acceptance and issuance, which had one proclamation during the prior month.
Okay. Thank you very much. We will now go into the consent calendar. All consent calendar items are considered routine and will be enabled in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these matters unless a request is made, in which event the item will be removed from the consent calendar. All items removed from the consent calendar for further discussion will be heard at the end of the scheduled matters. Council? Okay, now, no items to be removed, nothing? We have items 1 through 9 on the consent calendar.
Move to approve items 1 through 9 on the consent calendar.
Well, second.
We have a motion, and we have a second. Call for a vote.
Well, we're going to need to do roll call vote.
Yeah, roll call vote.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Present? Or
No.
aye? Aye, sorry. This is a
Haven't had to do roll
That's
call in a
okay.
while.
Councilmember Stowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye. Passes 4-0. Yes?
I apologize. So we had an item that was just approved that needs to be reconsidered with more information.
Oh, did we already call the roll on the vote?
Yes.
Oh, we did. Okay, so we've approved the consent calendar, so we need a motion to pull, what's the item? To reconsider what item?
It would be item number 8, which is the Prop 218 vote regarding the formation of the LMD.
Do I need to make the motion since I made the initial?
Be helpful.
Okay, so item
So the
number 8.
motion would be to remove it from consideration.
Well, no, you're reconsidering number 8. since
Okay.
you already approved it.
Okay, a motion to reconsider item number 8.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Now you vote on that, roll call vote on that.
Okay.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
aye.
Councilmember Stowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye.
Okay, now you can actually consider it.
Well, we need to actually remove it, and we will bring this back with correction. There was, the engineer's report needs to be updated with additional parcels, actually reducing the assessment, but we need to bring that back. So my apologies, council. I was notified
All
of
right,
that.
that, item number 8 will be
further
brought back.
There's no further action
discussion.
necessary.
No.
It will come
Okay.
back before you with correction.
Thank you very much. We will now move into the public hearing.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have one public hearing that's been scheduled for this evening, and that is to consider a conditional use permit for the Hampton Inn, and Ms. Phillips will provide the staff report.
Excuse me, sorry, just getting used to this new system here, okay. Excuse me for that, and I just want to relay that I've got the applicant's agent on the phone, so if you hear noises from this direction, that might be what that is, so, excuse me. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lawless, Mayor, and Council. This is for consideration of a conditional use permit for the Hampton Inn. This project is located at the southeast corner of J and State Route 190, immediately east, as you can see, of the existing Holiday Inn and Suites Hotel, which is, by the way, owned and operated by the applicant. This item came to the Project Review Committee in December of last year to consider construction of a 52,200 square foot, 4-story, 87-room hotel. As I mentioned, it's generally located east of J. It's north of Montgomery, just a bit north of the Public Safety Building, on a 2.5-acre site that's vacant between two existing hotels. Here we go. There's a draft elevation of the hotel showing the architectural style and the articulation. Amenities with the hotel would include a meeting room, a breakfast area, a fitness center, an outdoor pool, and an outdoor recreation area, as shown here. And I apologize for the quality of this. Shrinking a great big plot down to a 8.5 by 11 tends to take away some of the detail, but you can see some of those things here. If you can follow my mouse, here is a meeting room on the first floor. There's a breakfast area here near the porte cochere. Front desk is there. And then again, an outdoor swimming pool located in this area here. Access to the site would be provided by way of existing recorded easements. You can see those here on the site plan. There's an existing driveway just to the southeast of the parcel. And it would also be able to access from J Street through an existing recorded easement. Let's see. Subject site is consistent with the general plan land use designation and zoning standards for the general and service commercial zone district. The proposed hotel supports the general plan land use element goal to foster strong and visually attractive regional centers oriented around the regional connectivity of State Route 65 and 190, which is one of the things that makes this part of town so popular for hotels. The hotel is permitted in the CG zone with a conditional use permit. And due to its proximity, as I just noted, to this two state highways that brings visitors into Porterville, the project site is flanked by two existing hotels. So the existing Holiday Inn and Suites is in this area, as shown on the site plan. And then there's a Best Western that is just east of the project site. And there's also the Denny's in this area here along 190, just to the northeast corner of the hotel. Current data related to hotel vacancy rates, and I'm sure that Mr. Weidner would chime in on this if I've misstated anything, but we do show a need for hotels in this community, according to economic development information. And then, of course, to the north of this project, we have two of the larger shopping centers in town with J Street Crossing and Riverwalk, which would provide for retail and dining options for folks that decide to stay at these hotels. Let me just show you a little bit before I get to my conclusion. Again, there's a visual description of the elevation. The first floor would have some rooms on it, but mostly focused on amenities and other main features. This is the second floor, just showing a variety of rooms and some storage area. Third, fourth floors, and again, more elevations that show one of the requirements of the development code is architectural articulation. We need it to not just look like a great big box, and so this represents that it will have a variety of facade treatments and colors, and also change in dimension. Oh, excuse me. So, going back. to that. As an infill project, this type of project is exempt from environmental review. Class 32 of the CEQA guidelines accommodate that. And so with that, it does meet the requirements of the zone district. It meets the requirements of the general plan, and it is consistent with design guidelines. So staff would recommend that the City Council adopt the draft resolution approving conditional use permit 2019-038C, subject to the conditions of approval. That concludes my report. As I noted, the agent's architect is here on the phone with me, and I believe the project applicant is present in the room tonight as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is 7:28. We will open up the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to come forth?
Your Honor, we did receive written communication that I would like to read into the record.
Please.
Ms. Angela Dennis wrote, "I wish to register my objection to the construction of the new hotel adjacent to the Holiday Inn and Best Western. It is not the hotel itself to which I object if the economic development staff claim that Porterville needs additional hotel facilities. I am not prepared to dispute them. My objection is to the minimal oversight and review this project has received and to the tendency of the city and its council to approve construction projects at the first mention of the word development. This project is being exempted from any and all review processes, including environmental, traffic, safety, air quality, noise, and others, on the basis of being a Class 32 infill project. This is, once again, a convenient legal loophole being exploited by the developer and embraced by the city staff to avoid potential hurdles to new construction. The council has repeatedly fallen for this same maneuver in the past, approving development projects without conscientious review, because doing so still meets the legally mandated bare minimum of due diligence. This new hotel will share infrastructure with 3 new housing subdivisions, which were all rubber stamped for approval by the council without any oversight or review of the city staff's recommendations. It is immediately next door to a hotel whose construction was opposed by the California Department of Transportation because the adjacent intersection was disastrously inadequate for the existing traffic conditions. That's a matter of public record under Conditional Use Permit 3-2005 in a letter dated June 7th, 2005 from Mr. Al Diaz of the Office Transportation Planning. That letter was acknowledged and dismissed at the next subsequent council meeting because apparently doing absolutely nothing is perfectly legal and does not qualify as an abuse of discretion in the city of Porterville. This hotel, necessary or not, is a major project and should be subjected to the same level of scrutiny as any development project in any responsible city. I have seen personally the complete lack of oversight the city exercises once a project is underway. Mitigated negative declarations are filed and then forgotten with no authorities in place to confirm that the mitigation measures are obeyed or enforced. The San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District employees are particularly impressed by the volume of infractions they observe within the city of Porterville on projects with well-defined pollution mitigation measures on record and ignored on site. I feel it is necessary, therefore, to deny this project's CEQA exemption and require a typical set of impact studies before approval.
Thank you. Council. Any discussion?
Is the public hearing still open?
Yeah, you might want to ask if anybody else wants to speak.
Oh, I apologize. I thought I closed the public hearing. Sorry, is there anyone else that would like to discuss?
Since we have live audience members.
See that there is none. It is 7:31. We will close the public hearing. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. All right, council, we bring it back. To this regard, do you have any? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No,
Oh.
it's just feedback.
Okay.
Oh, hello?
Hello?
Mayor? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hear you.
Okay, yeah, I had just quick questions in regards to some of the statements made in the by the public comment. So I'm just curious. I know that we completely put our trust in the city staff, and I know they do the due diligence to make sure that all projects we're provided with all the options and the analysis and breakdown. And so I appreciate the staff recommendations as well. And I'm just curious to know as to is it a pretty big deal for us to or is this indeed an exempt? Is this project being exempt from the CEQA due to the fact that it is a Class 32 infill project? And I would just like clarification if so, what does that specifically mean in terms of it being exempt, and why would that be so? I'm just curious myself as to if that's true, and if so, why?
Thank you, Councilmember Peñalosa. The Class 32 exemption is one of about 40 categorical exemptions that are allowed for and defined in the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. An infill exemption specifically, which is what the Class 32 is, provides for projects that are less than 5 acres in size. This one's about 2.5 acres, that are surrounded by existing commercial development, which this one is, so long as there are no outstanding and significant environmental issues. For example, if there was a vernal pool in the middle of the project site or something along those lines, obviously then the categorical exemption wouldn't apply. You can only apply it so long as there's no other major, habitat concerns. But in this particular case, the 32 is an appropriate, Class 32 is an appropriate exemption for this. If I can, I know that there was a comment made related to a comment that was provided by Caltrans 15 years ago in association with the adjacent hotel that was developed. And at that time, yes, there were significant concerns with traffic in this area, but as I'm sure all the council is familiar with, there have been significant improvements made at the J and 190 intersection, as well as improvements made to Montgomery and J, a variety of different, and of course further north, a variety of different transportation improvements that have been made in this area, specifically to alleviate some of Caltrans' comments that they had for projects that were happening back at that time.
There's public policy underlying a categorical exemption, council member here, because the law wants to encourage infill development, which is why there's a categorical exemption for it, rather than having development occur, keep going out with development, what we call leapfrog development. As things deteriorate, then just it goes out more. And so there's a strong public policy in trying to foster and encourage developing areas within, that are already within other developed areas. So that's the basis for it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that those are some of my comments or questions, and I appreciate your responses. I would just like to mention that I think this is great. I mean, we're going to get two hotels coming into the city. I was just reading an article in the Western City about economic development and how tourism has helped promote economic development for communities. And I think if there is a need for hotels, rooms and space for folks, I think this offers us an opportunity for our city to be a hub for economic development. And so, I appreciate the responses to the questions. Thanks.
Well, and as you heard me earlier, when I reported out with TCAG, Councilmember Peñalosa, that projects are being submitted to enhance traffic to the corridors, and I think it's a wonderful venue, especially with all the projects that are coming in.
I agree with you, Mayor.
I just wanted to make a comment too, as far as the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. To this point, I hadn't received any comments regarding any violations in our area, and I believe that they would probably let me know and hold me to a higher standard as a governing board member, and I can definitely look into that, but to my knowledge, there's been no comment to me in regards to those.
Councilmember Stowe, did you have any comment?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we adopt the resolution approving the conditional use permit for the 2019-38C, subject to conditions of approval. And also like to comment, maybe we should put a indoor water park right next door to it.
We have a motion, and I will go ahead and second that. We have a motion and we have a second. And if there be no further discussion, please call for vote.
Councilmember Peñalosa? Councilmember Peñalosa?
Sorry, I was on mute. Aye.
Councilmember Stowe?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes?
Aye.
Mayor Flores?
Aye. Passes 4-0. Okay, congratulations. We move on now to our scheduled matters.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you, Your Honor. We have 7 scheduled matters before you this evening. The first would be to consider a proclamation of the existence of a local emergency. This item is before the council in light of the novel coronavirus, COVID-19 virus. The council is certainly well aware of what are continuing to be guidances that are being received, practically it seems hourly, from either federal, state, county authorities. And so before you, based on some of those actions that have been taken and declarations of emergency based on both at the federal, state, and county levels, that the city council consider doing the same, purpose of which would be able to provide it access to potential resources should they become needed in the future. Certainly correspondence would be made between staff and the council with regards to those actions, consistent with what updates are occurring right now. Potential things may be, and considerations may include forced overtime of employees, differential pay for them, additional activities that are set up to support essential personnel, both at the city as well as potentially other local entities that have necessary and essential workers to help deal with the crisis. Thought I would just, and a couple of particular items for one really direction, and the others just kind of the lay of land right now here locally. So, as the council is aware, Eagle Mountain Casino will be closing its operations for a couple of weeks, effective tomorrow morning, and they have asked that the city no longer provide transit to the reservation right now, but connecting with other means of transportation at their park and ride location off of State Route 190. Porterville College has announced today that they are going to not be having classes on site, but will be moving to an online classes beginning March 30th. So they're going to extend their spring break, which they're on right now, for an additional week and then reconvene. But important to note that they are not closing the campus, but they are in the spirit of trying to mitigate social interaction, the classroom environment will move online when they return to classes on Monday, March 30th. Received notification just in the last couple of hours that even though the governor had recommended the closing of bars, and that the county public health will be closing all bars in Tulare County effective tonight, and which could impact bar restaurant combinations. So we'll probably find tomorrow which actions that they have taken notification on. We don't have an active list at this moment. Also, Governor Newsom, in a news conference he had this afternoon, made the comment that he does not believe that K-12 schools will be in session anymore this academic year. He's anticipating their closure and anticipating that they will remain closed through the rest of this academic year into the summer. The governor provided an executive order yesterday that made certain findings as it related to rental and foreclosure
Moratoriums on evictions.
On evictions, that's what I was looking for, I apologize. Yeah.
Other kinds of actions.
And especially on housing authorities and other landlords.
And other public agencies operating housing.
Yeah, so, but one of those as part of that order also had to deal with public utilities, and I think this is one I'd like to get some specific guidance from the council on, because it was more recommended, I would say, and if Mr. Knighton were in the room, I could equate it to Cal Recycle. So Cal Recycle wants you to do certain things, and then when you don't get participation, they become mandates. So he strongly recommended that all public and private utilities, water being one of those utilities, not go to disconnection for unpaid utilities until May 31st, and asked the California Public Utilities Commission to watch the behavior of all public and private utilities, which we could anticipate probably an inquiry from them as to what how we are applying the governor's recommendation. As well as that would do with the waiving of penalties for late payment as well.
What he's really trying to do is prevent shut-off during this crisis.
Yeah.
While people are being asked to
Just
remain at home.
reading between the lines here, since it's really worded awkwardly, it's not even worded as a directive, it's worded as a, hey, the Utilities Commission is requested to monitor measures taken in critical situations. I mean, that's pretty much what it says.
So we actually have a turn-off, I would call it a turn-off for non-payment tomorrow, which, with the council's direction. And we can do that with the council's direction if we want to do this next cycle. We have a four rotation cycle. We could certainly do that. And also would appreciate some guidance from the council if it wishes to do something different. In mass gatherings, you've got a couple of different competing guidances that are out there right now. You have the established guidance by California Department of Public Health that is restricting to 250 through the end of this month. The president yesterday announced that he would like to see that at 10.
And then, to which then the state governor last night said, no gatherings. So it's kind of like they just keep getting, it's all over. And I think if you go and look at the CDC stuff, it still says 50. So
Right, CDC is saying,
messages.
that's a great point. And then you've had the city of Fresno and the city of Los Angeles both use 50 as based on the CDC recommendation of 50. However, you saw in Los Angeles that they also closed all restaurants, closed all gyms, movie theaters, basically all social places that almost resembling the shelter-in-place that's been declared up in the Bay Area. So it would be staff's recommendation that the council consider adopting the resolution of a local evidence of local emergency, allowing, should there be, like I said, there are foreseen expenses that we believe are going to be coming in terms of how the city can meet essential needs of the community in its both in its essential employees, to essential services, which includes your infrastructure, public safety, and other governance mechanisms. And then in addition to supporting some of the important, the essential services as identified by the state, most specifically your medical community. So I do anticipate there to be impacts that are coming, and we would certainly be providing reports in that regard. So
There's some other legal implications too. It gives you greater flexibility in actions, especially if things if we really are in a crisis where we're stuck in a spot where we're going to be sheltering in place. It'll give the city some more flexibility in various actions, and then it also provides some potential immunities in some respects. So from certain regulations or some waivers from certain regulations when you have a local declaration in place.
Okay, so let me just ask this question. With the recommendation to consider the draft resolution or proclamation, would we add all of this to this? No, it would be separate, that would be direction.
The
This is separate.
declaration
This is-
covers all
okay.
of it, just the rest, were you asking for further I'm sorry, I maybe missed that.
No,
I
I
was just
think
wanting
there
to
was just.
clarify. I needed to clarify it for
Right.
myself.
So the resolution stands on its own, that there's a finding that, and that's why I provided other
Thank you.
evidence that there's,
Just providing the whole story, because
There's a local
when
emergency.
this was done, when this was provided to you, when we wrote the staff report.
On Friday.
Things have
Thank you.
changed. In fact, it was funny, I was writing another one for another public agency today, using this particular one, and I had to make several changes because things have changed
Have
so
changed.
quickly.
They're
So,
changing.
Mr. Lawless is making sure you're aware that, hey, we say, we have 250 in here, but it's actually gone down to, depending on who you ask.
To who you ask,
gathering.
and that, so outside of the resolution, so the resolution is just a finding that
Thank
there
you.
are conditions
Thank
that
you.
exist, and that's why I provided additional things. This is almost a hourly conversation.
Thank you.
That there are conditions that exist that would substantiate the declaration or the adoption of the resolution. In addition to that, outside of that, and you have on your agenda, which are really not going to be considered because they've all been canceled or postponed by the requesting agencies, but using that as a barometer, it would be helpful, where the council's comfort level is right now, because you have competing federal, state, other examples of locals that are all kind of trying to find their place right now. What is literal is this, the California Department of Public Health established 250. That is a restriction right now established by them through the end of this month. And then you've had two other Centers for Disease Control come in at 50. You've had the president who spoke about 10.
White House has come in at 10.
At 10. So really, we want to be sure, that from a local measure, where you would like for a matter of consistency, and as well as particular guidance, if the council wants us to do something different than follow the governor's guidance, that it not do disconnection of water accounts tomorrow. And if that were to be the case, one of the recommendations from staff would be probably that allowed to go through a cycle of 4, which would take you through 1 month.
So you can adopt the resolutions as a separate action.
Just separate
We can get
action.
direction. We can get direction on the other issues.
Correct.
Okay.
In specific response to your question, those two things would be more guidance or direction
That's
from the
guidance and
council.
direction.
For application, and then, but the resolution stands on its own.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions, Councilmember Stowe?
No, I just make the recommendation that we consider the resolution proclamation for positions of local emergency.
Okay, we have that motion. I'll go ahead and second that. Go ahead, because,
Just to clarify that with acknowledging that there may be no shut-offs, it doesn't relax any code enforcement or enforcement of violations.
There'll still be delinquencies, there'll still be collecting.
The one thing that he is asking for is that any waiving of late fees, to encourage folks to actually pay as they're being not disconnected. It's kind of trying to say, okay, can we try to get people to pay? If they don't, we're not disconnecting them, but also waiving the fees to get them to pay. It's kind of the.
Once people find out that this is there, I just don't want it to be considered a free-for-all for water, especially since, having a captive audience to know what the procedure is, I think is a benefit, although not wanting to be punitive to it to people in any regard, but just making sure that we're on top of that, because those regulations are also brought to us by the state as well.
And my only thought is that we're going to have people that already abuse this, and they find out they're going to get free water for another couple of months. They'll use the water, then they'll move again or do something. So I'm kind of hesitant about it, but the water situation thing, but I don't know if there's any way we can say, okay, if they had problems in the past, and I'm sure those are the people that really need it.
There may actually be, there may be some legislation that's come in too, because that was the other thing that came out last 48 hours was the governor has waived the 72-hour review period for new legislation so that they can get things. So some of this may become a moot point as far as the city's actually having to take separate action to do anything in that regard, but we'll just have to see what happens, see what comes through in the next few days.
And so with the other directives, that goes to another situation. We don't vote on that or make those decisions right now, right? Is that correct? This is just
I don't know, are
to,
you wanting specific action
Well,
on the
I-
utilities at this point?
I open it to the council if there is particular guidance you want. What I wanted to just say is that you've got a number of different numbers that are out there. The one I would say that is absolute is the 250, which was the California Department of Public Health. They said this is now it for the rest of this month, which is what prompted Eagle Mountain Casino, as an example, to cancel its concert last Friday. That was you will not have concerts, you will not have those things in excess of 250. So that is, I would say, a directive right now from a gathering standpoint. Is there something different, or do we want to defer, I would say, to any other guidance, or not even guidance, I would say directives that come either from federal or state, and we can
I'm going to
certainly do
recommend we
that.
follow, I'll be honest, I'm going to recommend you follow the governor's the governor's made it clear that he's not directing anything, but that he expects it to happen. So I would recommend that we follow our state
The state,
executive
there's
orders,
none?
whether they're recommended or not. No, he hasn't come out in that with writing yet.
Not in
He said
writing.
it last night during a press conference.
But what is the number that he's come
He was
out?
saying, well, I think he's basically, in some respects, he's agreeing with the president in that it should be a small, really, it's,
A
we're
small
looking at, you're
number.
wanting to keep groups small.
To me,
So-
250 for this community is far too large. If you have a 250 here, you have I mean, the people from the community that will be here, that will be other places is pretty dramatic. 25, I mean, seems more reasonable for what we're talking about, but still, that's not guaranteeing that anybody's going to want to participate to begin with, I
No,
think.
and there's a lot of different information, and I apologize for interjecting, but look at the provisions that we've taken tonight to have this meeting.
Yeah.
And I think we've done pretty good with how, just coming to the meeting to be able to operate, because we're gonna probably have to deal with emergency meetings as they arise, as things change.
And I'm glad you said that, and tonight is a good example. I'm glad, I meant to mention that. Now, one of the executive orders was providing, because the encouragement is for folks to not gather together in public, and this will come up in a later agenda item, is that you provide the means for folks to be able to participate electronically. And so this evening, we were going to have Councilmember Garola isn't physically up to participating, given surgery yesterday, but we have two members of council who are here. The significant, under that executive order, actually, none of the member of the council actually need to be here. You could all be, without noticing of your locations, although I will tell you both members of council, I'll let them speak for themselves, are at their residences within the city of Porterville. We still need to have 3 in the jurisdiction to be able to have a quorum, because we have, is that accurate? That's my understanding. We have to have 3 in the jurisdiction. We could have 2 members out of the jurisdiction participating electronically, but truly all 5 could be participating electronically. I think there's a number of meetings that are now happening that way. I think the Air District is considering having that this Thursday. So, but we still have to provide a forum for the public to be able to come, and so it would not surprise me at some point if, from an emergency meeting standpoint, that actually none of the councils physically on the dais. The spirit of the executive order did ask that a member of the body be there, state bodies, and it may be a good practice if at least one member of the body were physically in the place and the other participated electronically. But if we were in, we still have the noticing requirements and those sorts of things until there's, but it really did most to encourage individuals to self-isolate and be able to still participate, providing as well the public the ability to participate. We're streaming our meeting this evening audio-wise. You see cameras that have been put into the chambers. We hope that at your next meeting in April, we'll be able to actually stream that on a YouTube channel that in live time. We're working in that regard so that truly folks don't actually have to physically be here, but we still, under that executive order, have to provide that place for them, which is our tradition and our legal responsibility.
And a good example was when we got the TCAG meeting, we were able to go in teleconference. That happened from Thursday to yesterday, that was brought to the table, that we could do the teleconferencing because of the situation at hand, and so there's a lot. So back to a number, is that what we're coming back to? A small number?
At this point, we've had a lot of voluntary compliance. We haven't
Exactly.
had issues with having to actually mandate anything to anybody.
Exactly.
I don't know if you guys want to be in that position or not. You have the authority, the government keeps saying it because he prefers, that's what he wants, it's just the local governments to do it. So, I guess we could, one of the things is just play it by ear and keep strongly recommending the lower guidelines and see how compliance is.
I truly believe is a power of the elected body, that it's just recognizing there are competing guidances, that if this as an elected body has the power to do that, you're welcome, would like direction if you would like that enforcement. What it is right now is 250.
Right, and the
from
Department of
state.
Health and CDC has already said it's 250, but you have the discretion to lower that.
Well, we've already.
We're being really clear about it, so it really is up to the city whether you want to have a number or whether you want to just keep encouraging the lower numbers as they come out, and then if we have a problem, we try to deal with it, or, I don't know.
It hasn't presented itself that I'm aware of, and we're staying in communication. This is the dilemma the schools have been facing, is because they're the ones that typically are exceeding that, right? They have more than 250 folks, and their guidance out there is that if it's at a particular location. Convention centers was one of them, saying you could have separate groups, and if I say a convention center was this question, but they're all there, and it's exceeding 250, even if they have their own separate meeting rooms.
So my concern is that if we don't set something up, what'll happen is that we don't have that many rental facilities here in town that can host that many people, but the ones that aren't mandated to stay under that are going to get offers from people in communities that do have limits on events that they have. For instance, the fairgrounds, for instance, the Veterans Memorial or Ed Forey Memorial Building. Those places can hold more than 250 people. If we don't, if and they're going to be financially challenged too. So because other local events are going to cancel. So if we leave it open to them to be able to accept and put them having to make the decision between money and the community, I don't know that that's fair. So I think that if we're going to come up with a number, it needs to be underneath the threshold we're comfortable with, so that our community can help to follow those guidelines. Otherwise, we're just inviting larger numbers to come in from other places that don't allow it. Because Strathmore, their Veterans Building has canceled an event for the Strathmore Town and Country Club recently. So with closures in the surrounding areas happening, it's a real consideration.
And I feel that we should come with a smaller number. The 250 is way too many, and I think a more intimate number, because if you have like a 25 or less, or 50 or less, you're going to invite family, friends, and hopefully they'll be amongst each other and they'll say, hey, I don't feel well, so I'm not coming. But you get 250 or larger than 50, everybody's going to show up, whether they know if they have it or not. But I just think that 25 is probably a good number, because we have a case here already, have 2 cases in Visalia, and we definitely don't want it to spread any further. If we can stop it now, let's stop it. If we can prevent it from happening and spreading in our community, let's make that decision and do so.
Okay, let's.
No matter what number you have, by the way, you have to engage in social distancing, so.
Exactly,
Right.
whatever the number
Regardless.
is. So let's focus on a smaller number. Let's round it to 25. But let's go back to the resolution.
Yeah, we should get that passed.
Yeah,
I'm
Let's
just checking to see if-
we're having a big
We have
conversation.
There was a motion.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have a motion and a second on that.
we
one.
have a motion and we have a second. If there is no further discussion, let's do a roll call, a vote.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye. Passes.
Now, you guys want to talk number, or you want to approve a number?
Now we can talk a number.
Number?
Do we want to set the small number?
Yes.
I do. I mean,
Okay, well, let's do that. Let's do this right now.
I just
Good.
think
Can I,
large numbers are too inviting for people to spread. I I mean, we have to be within 6 feet, and it's gonna be very hard if you have 250 people in a room.
Okay,
Mayor, can I speak?
please do.
So yeah, I would agree with the number going down, minimizing it, recommending to the public and the community of Porterville to be, no bigger than that. I also would like to just re-emphasize, and I don't know if maybe John, if you would know a little bit more information, but how important is it for us to maybe re-emphasize and recommend people to be 6 feet apart? Because I just keep on seeing folks I know it's hard, it's difficult, but like, I don't know if we can add like further recommending that people, that 6 feet is really important, because it doesn't make sense. And I know it might be hard, but we can maybe just make a recommendation and re-emphasize that from the state recommendation. I don't know.
Yeah, that goes without saying. In fact, we've really, and appreciate multiple departments kind of working together to enforce that, even here in City Hall at our utility counters, at our different counters. And we've even gone to now putting footsteps, because, he said, don't, keep this line. Well, even then, and I think it's just been our society is just so interconnected that we don't recognize those. It's just different. So
Very difficult.
So we've had assistance from police officers on light duty to, even myself coming and reminding folks as I see them not where they're, and then they go, oh, you're right. It's not that they're purposely violating it. It's just not part of our culture yet, and I'd be curious to see. So, but I would say folks have been great. There's always going to be those that are kind of a little bit disgruntled because it's new, and maybe feeling like it's overreacting, but absolutely, we've done all that we can in trying to make sure that is being, especially in public facilities, that we have control over.
I would hope that the facilities and the agencies do that within their own, like the school districts and all of that, they take care of that. But here, it's a good example. We're back. Look at us tonight. The distancing is there.
The other thing you can do too is, so the 10-day that's coming out of the White House is for 15 days. It's a very limited, short duration because it's
The rest of this
following.
month.
Yeah.
So what you could do is you could actually follow along with the federal, the White House, guidelines, and strongly encourage the 10 and try to, and make, because I'll be honest with you, I don't think anybody's going to be holding any events in the next 2 weeks anyways, because it may become impossible for us actually in a few days
So
to do that.
I actually appreciate, I hadn't thought of that in that context. What you could do, because under this declaration of emergency, you have to visit this now
Again,
every meeting.
anyways.
Every meeting you're going to visit this, just as you do still with the drought emergency. You visit that item. We could have that particular guy saying, yeah, this is where we'd like it to be at 25 or number,
You're
25,
right.
and we'll visit that number at your meeting on April 7th.
Because you may want to actually, what I'm getting at here is you may actually want to even follow given that that they're really trying to hopefully get ahead of the situation, right, that now, with some real preventative measures, you may want to consider actually following the actual number that's out there for federal, because it's small, it's 10. And then, but really for the next 2 weeks, and then you're going to have a meeting, you'll have a council meeting in 3 weeks. So then you can reset that number if it seems appropriate to do so
Okay.
at that time. Just a thought.
I
You
think
can also go
Councilman-
higher if you want, but that way you're, if you want to be showing you're consistent with the federal as well, then you could.
I do have one more question.
You did.
I know Mr. Laws mentioned that I thought school might be suspended for the remaining of the term. And that 25 people that we have set, does that apply to the schools, or no, we can't make that kind of determination for the schools?
Schools have generally not
Yeah,
been
they're-
subject to those numbers,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, they call this small gathering, they call this gatherings, and the implications of this are to churches. Now, they have found they cannot, there's a legal argument there that you may be more
but
familiar with, that they cannot enforce that on.
Probably trying to argue constitutional right of assembly, I don't know.
Yeah,
assembly motion.
there's a legal argument that you can't do that for church, for places of worship. But but mostly generally this applies to your social types of things. Community events, certainly, I will tell you, I believe most given a lot of the relationships I have, most of the civic clubs are not meeting.
They're basically saying any non-essential gathering.
Right.
Correct.
So, and then essential gatherings, they'll allow it, but they really want you to do everything you can to limit that, even in the essential context, so.
You know, even at 10, not that there's a lot of them, but any bunco group is not meeting at that point. And these are, you know, sometimes age specific to the group that's in the sensitive category. You know, we do need to look at what we're encouraging by setting the thresholds at which level.
If I could just add, and I know their guidelines, their encouragements, you know, they say the governor ordered them, but then he suggests, or he wants people to follow the guidelines. We will have people that won't follow these rules, and we put it out there, just like the governor put it out there, Tulare County's closed down the bars. In order for us to take enforcement action, there's going to have to be something specific. The governor did not put it in his. Now, there's been governors of other states, they actually made an executive order and attached a criminal act to it for violation of the order. That, I just want to be clear, that hasn't been done here, to my knowledge.
Even his executive orders are not truly orders, not at least the ones having to do with those kinds of restrictions. He's ordered some legislation, he's ordered some benefits, those have been orders. When he's ordered these limitations, they've been strong recommendations.
And I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but there is one state where the governor issued an order, and attached to the order was a criminal sanctions.
It was like, maybe Florida.
Yeah, where there was actually criminal sanctions attached to the executive order, created by the executive order.
Well, I mean, and you have had examples, especially with spring break, for some, and I don't know, they were reading,
Texas, South Padre Island had a real problem.
Oh, they were sending the law enforcement down Bourbon Street saying, you guys don't get it. They would saying, go home. You are not supposed to be here, and, congregating.
And that's a good point, because, you know, creating a number that's too difficult, because any enforcement is going to be related to something that's complaint-based, right? So when people aren't going to be driving around looking for where there's more than 10 cars parked thinking, oh, there might be 20 people in there. What they're going to do is get a call that someone's having a party or something's happening somewhere. So having a number that's too hard to quantify or count is going to make people either A, say, well, I don't know if there's 25 people in there. It's probably under, I'm not going to call, or, I'm going to call, but 10, 12 is pretty easy to figure out. So things like that we're going to be looking at, because and thank you to the police chief for bringing up the enforcement part, because that all does come from a complaint-based system that we have here.
And I think what's also going to be important here, just for the council's consideration, we have more than 10 people in this room right now.
Right. We're in
So-
violation of the White House order.
Yeah, so,
Or guideline.
but it's also important, we are honoring the 6-foot social distancing, and, so it may be more reasonable, something more than 10 is considered, maybe 25, I don't know, but, I also I don't want it to be called that we weren't consistent in our own applicability, so.
Yeah, and I don't want to say 25 and they rent a small room where they still don't have the 6 feet. I mean, this 25 and you have at least 6 feet of distance, of social distance.
I haven't counted, 13, 14, 15, I don't know.
Okay. Small number,
25.
small number, okay?
Okay.
We've agreed to small number?
How about 25? Does that work for folks?
That works.
That works,
All right.
okay.
Get a motion second, I think, don't you, or do you just want direction at this point?
That was direction.
Strongly
That was
encourage it.
direction.
Strongly encourage is
That
25.
was direction, okay.
Since we're just strongly encouraging, we haven't hit martial law quite yet.
It would, now, as it relates to utilities,
It's like a bad,
I think a vote would be very important on the utilities, because that is ordinance. And only council can override its ordinance.
oh, yeah.
So if we are going to
Are we gonna
not do
delay
disconnections,
shut-offs for now?
delay shut-offs and not charge
Waive late
and waive
fees
late
for
fees.
now, to be revisited in 2 weeks?
3
Or
weeks.
3 weeks,
Well,
next meeting?
Could be next Monday or next Tuesday, but if it's not, because, well, I'm getting ahead of myself right now when I.
Well,
Well, that right now, it's not on here. I mean, so do we make that decision tonight?
I think you can ask that it be
That's what-
reviewed, so we could review, you could,
We'll delay
Open action.
pending action, because we don't have it on, that really should be a
That's
separate
what-
agendized
that's
item.
enough.
well, and it came up subsequent to.
I get it.
yeah.
Exactly, but we want to do it the right way, as far
Well,
as,
did you want to add it, I guess what John's right, we can actually add it as an urgency item tonight on the delaying, if we want to do that, because it did come up after the posting of the agenda, and
It didn't come up until last
we have
night.
shut-offs that would be required to happen
okay.
tomorrow if we don't do it, so we can add
That
that as
would-
an urgency item, which then, I know Mr. Eckhoff's been standing, he may want, he'll have another chance to speak, so, because we haven't had a comment on that yet. But,
Okay, do we want, council, we've been asked
wanna
to
add
add
that?
an emergency item with regard to the water.
we need a unanimous vote to add it.
We will need a unanimous vote, or, well, we need a vote.
I
Well,
think.
can I ask this question? So if they pass the resolution of emergency condition,
I don't know that I don't know that doesn't waive the Brown Act rule. I mean, we can add an urgency item.
all right.
Yeah. We can add it, so it's not like, because we can add it, I don't think it's something we need to, we would want it, we can still add it as a noticed item under the regular rules.
I think we need to add it.
Let's add it after,
Let's add it so we can talk more about it, since we've already
let's
talked about
add it, let's get the other item, and let's add it to the agenda.
Is there another thing you need to add?
Well, no, unless there was any other particular, but that's the most important one that's kind of been, because that's ordinance of the council that's asking to be waived. Yeah.
I'd like to go back to the
question.
number thing.
Okay, please ask your question.
I don't think we should make it a recommendation. I think we should make it definite.
Yeah, so then we need to add it as an item.
We're asking to have it added as an emergency item, and we'll discuss it at the
Somebody like
end.
to make a motion to add it on?
I make the motion that we add it as an emergency item.
I second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye, it passes unanimous.
You can.
And I did have a follow-up question, John,
Okay,
or Mayor, can I speak?
okay.
Sorry. How does I know that there's a concern as well. I know the governor passed a moratorium in regards to renter evictions, and I'm curious to know if how does that impact our community? Like if we do have folks that are impacted by the coronavirus weeks that are that are not working and are not able to pay for their mortgage or their rent. Do we have to take any action on that, or will the governor's moratorium take to effect before, without us having to take any action?
City would have to adopt an ordinance.
Okay.
You'd have to adopt a law, because, and so, like LA, I think, in Sacramento, are looking at potentially
Fernando, I didn't hear that question.
doing,
Hear that one.
oh, okay. The question, Councilmember Stowe, was whether, with the governor's last executive order concerning potential eviction moratoriums, whether the city had to do anything or whether that was being done at the state level, and the answer is no, that the city, the city has our city in particular has never, we don't have rent control ordinances to begin with. So it'd be uncharted area for us, because we'd be actually entering into adopting housing regulations. So, it has to be done, I think, individually by the cities. Now, that you might be able to do, I mean, theoretically, if you were gonna go there, I think that there's probably provisions for doing that on an emergency basis if you needed to, but what I think he's hoping for is by providing for it in the executive order, that landlords will take it upon themselves not to evict during this period of time.
Okay.
But I don't know, and if we see a problem, then maybe we can, then we talk about addressing it. So, because you can, I know the city of LA and the city of Sacramento are looking at that. But we'd have to then figure out how to enforce. We just haven't, it's not been an area that we've ever been involved in. Dealing with the rents of our.
Thank you for that. I think I think as we get reports back on our council meetings, I would like to know if there hopefully landlords will understand folks that are not able to, that due to the coronavirus and the impact it's having on the workforce, that people that they know, that they will, consider them not evicting them and having them, having to go through that whole process of, because they can't pay. And then, but if there is specific cases in the community that we hear from, I think we should consider, our options, because it would be unfortunate to have someone be evicted from their home due to the fact that they're not working or their hours were cut due to the pandemic, right?
So I know what you will see likely in the public housing context or the quasi-public where the housing authority is involved is there will be some leeway given, whether it's adopted officially as a policy or not. So that'll help alleviate some of that. It may not address it all though. So, but back to the, Milt, you had asked back to the thing we just added.
Yes, the emergency, yes, we're going.
Is the gathering stuff. So if you guys want to set numbers on where we're going to strongly encourage, that would be great. So
Not just strongly encourage, but put it in there. But before I do that, there's a gentleman in the back been standing for a while. He may have something.
Well, that's the other thing. Thank you. I was going to say we should allow the members, since we added an item and that wasn't on during public comment, you guys should allow public comment on that item.
I don't know who it is, but he may have something pertinent to what we're talking about, and we might want to make a change.
It's Mr. Eckhoff.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
Did anybody want to speak? Did you want to speak, or you just?
Go ahead.
You didn't have to just be standing. Anybody can speak if they want to.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is Mr. Eckhoff from Springville, California. I'm also the chairman of the Valley Adult Day Services Board of Directors, and that's why I'm down here tonight, because I wanted to find out what was going to happen. I tend to think that about the last 30 minutes discussion was totally out of order. The motion, as I understood it, was to declare the local state of emergency to take advantage of the state, federal, whatever emergency declarations. And I didn't recall, maybe I misread it, but I didn't recall anything in there about any of these other items as far as establishing rules and regulations here. I spent the last 2 days researching, chasing down leads, trying to keep up with the changes that have been taking place at federal, state, and local levels. And so I really have a problem with something being thrown through without having a chance to say something on a local level at least. Yes, you can establish or put an additional item on as an emergency item on the agenda. I think it should have been done at the beginning of the meeting, though, rather than halfway through. The big thing is, when you put something on as emergency, you really got to think serious about it, because you're eliminating the chance for anybody from the public to speak about it until you've made your decision. So I would really prefer having you put the thing off for a couple days to where you can establish a special meeting and maybe have people come in and have a hearing about it and get their opinions, because believe me, it's creating problems for us. We're looking at the possibility of suddenly waking up one morning and saying you can't go in there and you can't bring those people in to take care of them during the day. And if we can't take care of them during the day, then we're going to get calls in from somebody saying, how come you can't take care of my father or my sister or whatever today? I've got to go to work. I've got to go to school, whatever. We need time to work this out. We've been chasing down options and stuff, how we can work around this and make it work. We're already spreading people all over the building, keeping the numbers down and everything. We're following all the recommendations that come down from the state, federal, county, and from our licensing bureaus and everything. And we're going beyond these in a lot of cases. And like I said, excuse me, I'm drying out. Except for licensing is concerned, they are exactly that, recommendations. There's nothing power behind them. Your local groups, like your county and your city, are a little different situation. You can come out and pass some resolutions and stuff that have a bite to it, which the state and federal have not been doing at this point. So please give us all a chance to get in on the thing and help make these. We're looking for safety ourselves, definitely looking for safety, and we want to help create that. We don't want to have something dumped on us that may or may not work. So please invite us in.
Thank you.
But isn't Your Honor, isn't that an essential facility? I mean, something that's necessary and we have to have, I mean, would that be considered just as a gathering? That's a place where it's almost like a
It's an adult day.
daycare center.
And they're going to be under,
They have their own separate directive, actually, which I'm sure he's.
as he mentioned, the governor is paying special attention to those kinds of facilities.
Yeah.
Those regulations are going to supersede the cities.
The Department of Social Services has a whole bulletin out on adult day, senior day, residential care facilities, because I actually have a skilled nursing facility client, so we're dealing with all that right now. It's a little bit different, that they're still requiring the social distancing. I don't know that the number is going to apply, though, to you guys, the gathering number. But they are asking, but they have a whole host of other concerns, because you have like, they really are trying to minimize what they call congregate activities and programming, so it is markedly affecting what, the normal programming and the logistics of running the facility. So, but they are under some separate guidelines.
Back to where the addition of the emergency item, it was my understanding it was for the water direction and the utilities.
Correct.
And that is back to where we asked the emergency
What
item.
emergency item? I'm sorry, the
The one we just had.
the
one that we
proclamation?
had-
The
No, not
proclamation,
the-
that's just the.
No.
The urgency
The
item you added
urgency
was on the
in-
gathering number.
No. That's why I'm back to clarifying, it had not to do with that.
No, it has to do with the
direction of the water, the emergency
Oh,
water.
you're right, I'm sorry.
Okay, now,
My brain can't.
I have to bring that back to that, okay? Now, the emergency item will go on after the other items, or is it right now? That's my question. Are we
That's the
gonna-
item you just approved to consider.
Okay, that's where we're going. Now, let's discuss the emergency item with the water, the turnoff, okay? Let's get back to,
Sorry, you're right, we're getting sidetracked.
and that is because there's water direction to shut off tomorrow?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, council, let's bring it back to that.
Well, I thought I made a motion to approve that as of starting tonight.
We hadn't discussed that.
Well,
Number of 25.
No, we're not, that's what we're saying, we're not,
No.
I agree with Mr. Eckhoff. We didn't have a set number to mandate. If we're gonna do a number at this point, I'd recommend you guys do it as a guideline, and you guys can approve it then if you wanna have it at the next meeting. That's part of the reason why I'm
That's-
saying, you can have a strong, and you can decide what number you wanna strongly encourage, but that's what I would stick to, but that's a separate matter.
To be brought back.
The urgency item is actually the utilities issue. Are you going to go ahead and authorize staff to hold off for now on shutting down utilities and waiving late fees?
That is your ordinance. And the staff does not have the ability to deviate from that.
Okay, then let's just wait and bring that back along with,
Well, then shut off is going to happen tomorrow.
No, I think we need to waive the shut off and the fees for a month pending any decision that'll be made in the next 2 weeks that deal in greater detail with it. Because it keeps the cycle clean enough to deal with going forward. It's only one cycle, and it gives us a month to really see what's happening, and then it allows for other folks, state or feds, to figure out what other guidance we should have.
Yeah, and we can provide a report as part of this declaration when we bring this back to you at your next regular meeting, what effect that has had, because at that point, we'll have gone through several cycles. I would say because we have 4 cycles, we'll have gone one per week. So we have a cycle that's coming up tomorrow, then we'll have one the following Wednesday, then one the following Wednesday, so we will have been through 3 cycles at that point.
Okay.
And we
what-
can
is there a
provide some
recommendation?
experience.
Is yours a recommendation?
Well, I'd be happy to make that a motion. I move that we go ahead and don't do turn-offs for a month and then waive the fees associated, pending some other information that comes from the state.
Okay.
I would like to second.
We have a motion and we have a second. No further discussion? Let's call for vote, please.
Councilmember Peñalosa? Councilmember Peñalosa?
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes?
Aye.
Mayor Flores?
Aye. It passes, and you've been given direction on that, and then the other will be brought back. Mr. Eckhoffs will be bringing that back.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much, council.
And I didn't know if there was any other particular, I mean, this is such a evolving situation, if there are other issues that the council wishes to, but
No.
that's why I wanted kind of to, this is the lay of the land as it was. Again, it moved again with the governor saying he doesn't anticipate schools being back in session.
It'll be new in the morning.
It'll change,
gonna
things
change
are
again tomorrow
changing
morning.
rapidly.
Changing.
Okay.
Which unfortunately, as much as we're trying to get things noticed, there are times when things are just gonna come up, and we'll be adding
And-
probably more urgency items than normal.
I understand.
Because of that, unfortunately. And I know the public's gonna be frustrated because we also have, issues with holding our meetings, but we're gonna do what we can, do our best that we can, and we are gonna try to keep getting public input for the record.
And it's because I expect him to really just fully shut down the state. We can't do any of this stuff, so,
Thank you so much.
That's the rumor.
yeah.
Okay, now we'll move on to the next scheduled matter.
And I would, Your Honor, if it's okay, I would say the next 5 of these civic events have all been asked to be withdrawn by the sponsoring agencies. All of them have postponed. So we'll continue to stay in communication with each of these. So there's not an action to take of the
Thank you.
council because they've all been withdrawn by their sponsoring, by their sponsors.
Thank you so much for that. Then, we move on.
All right, so your final scheduled matter this evening is to consider cancellation of the special meeting of City Council. And actually, it may, if it pleases the council, you have this meeting that was intended to, next Tuesday to be for your goal setting, which I would say we're not in a position right now to be able to do that. And I think it's a broader, I think there's a lot of things, moving parts right now that actually are going to make budgeting very difficult. The state itself is trying to assess what its budgetary impacts are. So the ability for staff to provide you a realistic budget picture, I think, is a little bit difficult right now.
That'll be in the next executive order.
Yeah,
It's a
I
little
don't know.
delay with budget requirements or something.
Well, we've been here before. During the recession of, and I'll just use that as 2009, the council was wrestling with budget cuts and those sorts of things, and it did a continuing resolution for several months, I think until, October is what we did that, and then adopted a budget where it had certain cuts, it had certain removal of projects to find itself back to balance. So, now, that being said, you have a meeting that you have called, taken action for next Tuesday. Is there any interest perhaps to keep that meeting for emergency purposes? To deal with any actions that you feel may need to be taken? Instead of, because your next meeting after that would be April 7th.
Council, what is your direction? Do you wish to keep the next meeting for emergency?
Yes, I would, Mayor.
With the new allowances for meetings, we can be either video or telephonically in?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that you would need not to be physically here. Again, as I recommended, probably have one member of the body be physically here for that. If there isn't any business for I'm imagining there probably will be, but I don't know.
You're so optimistic.
But if there isn't any business for the body,
We wouldn't need to necessarily, you guys could decide not to hold it, is that what?
Okay.
is that a
yeah.
24-hour cancellation? Is that?
Actually, I think you can just cancel it. I mean,
Right
you don't
now.
have to have 24-hour notice to cancel. You just need 24-hour notice to notice.
Let's keep that
So,
emergency items.
Yeah, part of this was, so you have you're getting competing directions. So you're getting direction that, for example, the legislature went into spring recess early. It is going to be out for 3 weeks, went out 2 weeks early. So they're asking you to please limit there are cities that are canceling their meetings. I'm suggesting maybe to keep the one that you have in case there's any other emergency actions you need to take.
Because you may be facing.
You may be
meetings
facing other
after that.
actions.
depending on what's going
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Let's keep it open then
Okay.
for
And we
an
can-
emergency
we
as
have the
needed.
option of noticing it with, in 24 hours in advance, which is nice because if we don't need it, then we won't need to notice it. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And then you'll know, because it's only 24-hour notice, it's required anyways.
Okay.
so.
So we won't, I'm sorry to change the recommendation, but from the conversation, and I appreciate the council's diligence and through this whole very uncharted and uncertain time. So if we keep the meeting, if we need it, and if we don't, then we won't notice it, and, but
Then our next
that
regular
as
schedule.
well, understanding that the governor did do what for the purposes of allowing meetings to occur and the council not to be there in physical presence.
Okay. Thank you very much. We will now move into oral communications. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to come forth during oral communications? See that there is none. We will move into other matters. Councilmember Stowe, is there anything you'd like to share?
No, other than I appreciate you guys allowing me to do this electronically, attend the meeting. And hopefully we'll get past this real soon and we'll be back in the regular form and standard that we're accustomed to.
Thank you. Councilmember Peñalosa?
Thank you, Mayor. So I would just like to say, I appreciate staff, city manager, and everybody. We just got, we're still healing from our fire departments and everything that happened, and we're back to back from one crisis to another crisis. And so I appreciate all staff, working diligently to make sure that we're on top of what's happening and ensuring the safety of our city staff, as well as running everything, making sure that everything's going well, and being in meetings. So just want to share my appreciation to everybody that is working hard during this time. So that's all.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to remind everyone to take a look at what you're doing on a daily basis and what your actions are, and even though something can be something you practice every day for a long time. Even me, I'm looking at having a basket by the door I throw my shoes in, and have some other slippers I walk around the house in, so I'm not walking around the house with my shoes. I've just been everywhere else with little things like that, and little changes can make a big difference, and if Tom Brady can make a change, then we all can.
I want to say thank you to staff and everyone. It seems like we just came off of one thing and now we're dealing with something all over again. And I know that these are difficult times. It's not just for us. I call it for the world and for the nation, and not just for our community. And one of the things as I look and I watch and I observe is I'm committed to maintaining a positive outlook. And as we come together as a council and as a community to continue to address the issues through these times, I understand we may have to hold a lot of emergency meetings, but know, and I'm looking at staff when I say this, know that we feel and empathize with some of the things that you're going through and some of the decisions that you have to make internally to keep the operations going. As a council, and those of us that are up here, we are available to the community by phone and electronically. Our availability is there. And that's important for our community to know, especially during this time. The last public event that I did attend was the Public Safety Recognition Dinner, and I want to say congratulations to the recipients. It was done it was nice, and it was amazing. You saw some of the same people that we had seen before, and to know that there was warmth there all over again as we gathered as a community. And I myself, I'll be diligent as, you know, it's not to be rude or disrespectful, but I think I'll probably hold off in attending some of the community events if we get invited to them. But most of them have been canceled, so we're good. Okay? That's all I have to say. Mr. Lawless?
I would say this is the most unusual St. Patrick's Day that I think I can recall. But appreciate the kind comments and appreciate the council's support and inquiries and appreciate your engagement on things and trying to make sure information is going back and forth. It is remarkable the will of some employees who I'd say just it's like whiplash, kind of back and forth, but just continue to be really impressed with the sheer will that some folks are just plowing through. So, and in the end, it really is service above self and service to this community, and and for that, I'm amazed.
Well, nothing further being said. It is 8:37, meeting adjourned.
All right, have a great one, everybody.
Good night, all.
Stay healthy.